All right, everyone. Well, welcome to this very special day for Scrum Masters of the Universe. Again, we're just so glad you're here. So who are we? For those of you who are new, some of these slides are not, there we go. Okay, there we go. So our mission, there's great value in getting out of our silos and connecting with those who are passionate about growth as an agile practitioner. We are a global group. Don't let the Des Moines, Iowa thing fool you. I just had to, Meetup makes me put something there, so I just put where I'm located there. But we are absolutely not an Iowa meetup group, although we have some Iowans here. So, yay. But anyway, our goal is to provide a place for agile enthusiasts all over the world to learn, grow, flourish, and applying Scrum and Agile in the world of work. So there's different ways you can connect with us. Obviously, from here, you found our meetup channel, but we have a LinkedIn page, we have a YouTube channel where we put our previous recordings, we have a Discord server, that's where all the fun happens. It's kind of like Slack or Teams, where you can go, there's different channels, you can go and connect with people in Meetup, in the Scrum Masters community. Family, ask some questions, learn some new things, and all kinds of connections, have some fun. It's a halfway decently active group. We would love to see it be even more active. So, and we have a presence on Twitter, all the good social media outlets. So our leadership team, I am personally so thankful for each and every person on our leadership team. They really have stepped up to the plate when we needed them, and they take an active role. So Mark Metz, he has been with me from the start, pretty much right away. So kind of what I guess literally my left-hand man here in Scrum Masters of the Universe. And then we have Mary Nogami, Jeff Colvin, Donna Reynolds, and most recently Anu. And so actually the last four are even rather new. As we've grown, a good problem to have is we needed more help. And these people have stepped in, they've stepped up to help. So thank you to the leadership team for all that you do. There's going to be links for all this stuff in chat. So if you want to check out we have some great things coming up. I'm not going to go over them because I don't want to spend a lot of time on them today. We want to get to our questions to our panel. So thank you to our sponsors. We do want to give a special shout out to our sponsors because without them, this isn't free to run. So they help us out a lot with some of the different costs of running a meetup like this and of this size. Scrum.org, Agile Alliance. We have OptiLearn, which is Ryan Brook. We have Rebel Scrum with Mary Ekbal. We have a new sponsor, two new sponsors, 3D Change with Jeff Davis, and he is actually a Scrum Pathway and Product Owner Pathway Guide. This is part of Jeff Watt's new program, Scrum Masters Pathways. Speaking of which, Agile Mastery Institute with Jeff Watts are also a sponsor, and Scrum Mastered with Daria Bagina. I can never quite sure how to pronounce her last name. She's going to have to help me out on that someday. But anyway, we have Scrum Master, great sponsors. Without them, like I said, we couldn't do what we do. So thankful to them. So here we are. I was just telling the team before you guys arrived that we were, I looked at our meetup count. I don't know, I think it was a week or two ago, and saw that we were getting close to 4,000 members, and May the 4th was coming. So how fun would it be to tie that into kind of a fun May the 4th celebration? So we launched 4,000 members by May 4th, which got crushed several days ago, and actually today we're up to 4,058. So that's just the broader audience that we can serve and provide this kind of connection to is all the happier that makes us. That's why we do what we do. We don't get paid for what we do. We do this exactly for this reason, to bring you all together, to get out of our silos. And so we're from all over the place. Like I said, it is a global group. So we have, so Donna was really great and came up with some great statistics for us that was really interesting to me. So as you can see here, we actually have members from all over the world. I believe, so we have 152 locations. So this is a little bit of Scrum by the numbers represented, which is 39 different countries, and states or provinces, 24, total cities globally, 89 total cities. So yes, it's definitely a global group. I would like to see this move even more globally. We try to make this sort of a at least European US friendly time zone. It's a little hard to make it time. We probably won't see a lot of Australia. I don't see anybody from Australia on there, but hard to get all the time zones covered. So we have had over the years, we would like to extend our sincere gratitude. We've had 57 really great esteemed speakers who have generously supported our 75 meetup sessions since our establishment in 2020. Their value contributions have been immeasurable and instrumental in making our events successful and engaging. So to all of you, I give my sincere thanks, and the leadership team. This is great. I asked, speaking of, here, and there is a list here. I'm not going to read all the names, but just to show you how many different speakers we've had here. And that was the former list. But today we're here with, so I was, speaking of amazing people willing to step up and really help us out. As I said, I thought of this idea a week and a half, maybe 10 days at most ago. And I reached out to some folks that have been a supporter of Scrum Masters of the Universe, or even me personally, even professionally, I would say, and to see if they'd be willing to join us today, and right away, all four said yes. So that's just a testament to the kind of support we get, and we're so thankful for it. So we, so I'm showing the wrong slide. I'm sorry, guys. This was the slide I was supposed to be on. So we have Bob Galen here, Enterprise Agile coach, author of many books. My personal favorite is actually Badass Agile Coaching. He's also the host of podcast Metacast, which is in its 13th year, I think.
Yes.
Yep. We have Todd Miller and Ryan Ripley. It's like your two names always go together, like peanut butter and jelly or something, but I can't say them separately somehow. But they are professional Scrum trainers, authors of the book. They're wildly popular and so helpful book, Fixing Your Scrum. It's a weekly. I've read it many times, but I refer back to it very often. And host of the podcast YouTube channel Agile for Humans, where they've got Your Daily Scrum and some other things. They even have a subscription I can't speak, you guys. A subscription option, which I highly recommend. Some great content there. And it's really fun because there's not a lot of people there yet, but it's growing. So get in on the groundbreaking new offering from them. And then we have Gunther Verheyen. Brian, what do I even say about you? You professional Scrum trainer, author of books Scrum, a pocket guide, 97 things every Scrum practitioner should know. It's amazing. Like you're a sort of a Scrum grandfather from very involved in scrum.org, right? Some of the things you've done for them, and writing a lot of the curriculum, right? Is that for the professional Scrum Masters and professional Scrum with Kanban, if I remember right?
No, used to write a lot of those things. It's now being done by people in the community, let's say. Yeah.
Okay. In the past.
Yeah.
And he's also offering right now some Scrum.org classes I see on his schedule. And if you want to learn about Scrum values, Gunther is the place to go. He even has a special web page. You can throw that link in chat, Gunther, that a special website just about Scrum values, how important they are. Learned so much. So with great gratitude and respect, I welcome you all on our behalf of the leadership team to this really special event. And so how it's going to go today is if you want to ask a question, please use the letter Q before you type the question in the chat window. Understand that we'll try to get to as many questions as we possibly can. If you posted your question during registration, I know we said don't ask it here again, but you might want to, because I'm going to kind of, I want to give priority to you people who are here live, who actually showed up for the event for your question. So you can ask it again, but I'm going to do a little mixture. And then, we'll get to as many questions as we can. And just feel free to stay in mute and then use the chat window to share your comments. Again, make sure you put a Q so that our host our co-host here can help point out those questions. So I'm going to stop sharing and so we can all see each other. All right. Now we have
and I can wear my cape. Yeah.
Oh, wait, we have to break out our Star Wars gear. I think yes, there we go. Thank you, Gunther. And Todd, I think you got like a lifesaver going on there. I think they're bringing out their toys for this event. Oh, no, as you brought out, I see them. My favorite.
Gunther, does that mean you and I are battling since I have the Vader saber?
Oh,
I have no idea, Todd, because I just got this from my son. I've got no, he told me I'm now a guy called Obi-Wan, and that's about everything I know.
You actually kind of have the look going too. I think you could be in a Star Wars movie. It looks well on you. Looks good. All right, I love it. So do we have, I have not been keeping an eye on the chat. Do we have any first questions? Otherwise, I'm going to start with the questions that came in from the group while you guys think of them. All right. Why did Nexus framework, it didn't get promoted at a global level like the SAFe framework penetrated in the market? Do you have an opinion on why Nexus is not as popular?
I think that, sorry, I'll just jump in. I think that's a function of the trainer model more than the marketing or efficacy of a framework. And so, when you take an SPC course and you get certified, then you can teach a class, and that really spread the number of people who could teach and train. And that really, I think, is what led to that initial growth. With Nexus, in order to teach it, you still have to go through the Scrum.org process of being a PST. It's a little more rigorous. It's a lot more rigorous. And so I think that was probably one of the main factors. I know that there's now a really good book, Patricia Kong, Kurt Bittner, they wrote a really nice book about Nexus in the Scrum.org series. Information is starting to come out. And I think companies are starting to realize that Nexus, it's still Scrum, and there's some benefit to that. And so I think I think we're seeing kind of an uptick, but I mean, point well taken. SAFe definitely got out there, but I think that was a function of their model more than anything else, especially around who can train and who can teach it.
Yeah. Plus, nobody believes that it can be that simple, because I've got things, if they're a big organization, that they need more than just whatever Scrum, or they need some big things. So it's just overcoming that sort of disbelief also. Just people don't believe, no, it can't be that simple. And that sort of has to do also with sometimes with management leadership, with status, ego, feeling important that, yeah, we want to be able to do more than Scrum. So it's a lot of things probably.
Yeah. So we're jumping around here just because there's lots of questions. Like, what are your thoughts on, I'm not sure I've heard of this, but what are your thoughts on organizations Order 66ing their agile departments? My organization released most of the Scrum Masters except a couple of us. I know Capital One went through a similar move. Do you see this as a trend?
I think it might be hard to answer just because of the economic uncertainties that we have and if there's any correlation there. I also think that it could be how, I'll be blunt here, it might not be a popular opinion, but it could also be how organizations have interpreted the Scrum Master role, right? Scrum Master was never intended to be a Jira administrator, right? A Scrum Master is a powerful change agent in an organization that is there to work with the product owner, work with the developers, work with a Scrum team, but then there's a whole organizational aspect to it that I think has largely been ignored in a lot of organizations. And I think that could have contributed to it as well, right? As tools have progressed and things like that. So this is my level of kind of resetting into, we need to really view the Scrum Master accountability. Now it's accountability. I said role, but as the powerful change agents that enables agility in an organization and the effectiveness as a Scrum team and is given the authority to do that. So I think that could be a bit of a byproduct of that.
Yeah, I think so.
I
Yeah,
hope
some organizations, they don't know what to do with us. Right?
I
So
want to make it a real quick important point, I think, is how are we communicating our value to the organization so that when they're making economic decisions, they understand the value proposition of anyone with Agile in their name. That's be it Scrum Master, Coach, Agile release agents, or whatever. And I don't know, I would challenge us as a community that we're not communicating our value maybe as clearly and as precisely as we should be. So we need and boldly. Very often we're shy, or we expect other people to communicate our value. And we should be, every one of us has a valuation, communication, connect the dots, make sure that every leader in the organization knows what we're doing, what we're producing, why we should be there.
Yeah, and I'd like to build on that a little bit, Bob. That's really great because Jamie, I'm not seeing such a big sort of demotion, whatever things firing people in Europe at least. What I have seen is a bit of building on the problem that Bob just indicated. That certainly, like 10 years ago, there was an enormous boom of Scrum in the Netherlands. I was certainly involved in that. A lot of big companies went for Scrum and Agile and so on. It became really big, and it sort of went up so quickly that a lot of people that were like really sort of cheap, opportunistic people, quickly having seen a little thing about Agile, calling themselves Agile coach because companies were looking for them all over the place. And what I have seen, not sort of the big things that is happening like at Capital One, but there's been a sort of decrease in the number of Agile coaches. A lot of them got fired again because, and that is something that Bob pointed out. I feel that in the end, a lot of those people were not able to demonstrate what they stood for, what they were bringing, the value they would bring to an organization. And honestly, it had nothing to do with bad communication. They just didn't bring value to the organization. End of discussion. They just tried to capitalize on the rise and the emergence of a lot of big organizations go for Agile. And so that felt for me like sort of more like what is happening in Capital One, not, but that felt like more like a healthy sort of market correction. That's what's sort of weeding out people that were like, had been, so that I've seen a rise and a decrease again of things, but not in those big organizational layoffs and so on. But I've seen it coming up and going down because a lot of those people couldn't do what Bob correctly invites us to do, demonstrate, show, explain what the value of that change is. And another thing I've seen also where the Scrum Master role obviously is, or call it Agile coach or whatever, is a challenging role. I don't know a lot of organizations that are open for that sort of provocative kind of messages, challenging and so on. A lot of companies, certain leadership think that is annoying. It's like, no, you're not loyal to the company. A lot of people don't see that challenging the status quo, asking challenging questions, provoking change, inviting people to think about change, about improvements and so on. A lot of companies don't see that as something that is enriching them, although it is. So that's also, it sort of like Bob said, I think that is probably also difficult in showing the value of the role of the accountability. Bringing change to the organization might feel like just an annoying.
Yeah, that's a good point, Gunther, because it's not like they're the challenges that a really good Scrum Master are going to pull out are going to oftentimes be directed towards managers that have been there for quite some time and shaking things up and maybe unearthing and making transparent things that people have not wanted to cope with for quite some time, and that's uncomfortable. And we're humans, right? We don't like to be uncomfortable. At least I don't really.
Yeah, so that kind of brings me to my next question. I'm going to jump to one that came in from the meetup registrants. What are some strategies for measuring the success of a Scrum Master? How can they demonstrate the value of their role to the organization? Right? Like, what are some ideas of how can they help the organization understand even what their accountabilities are? And how can they demonstrate that they're delivering on this value?
For me, a big difficulty in that is it often only becomes clear once the role is not being fulfilled anymore.
Sort of the dial tone.
Yeah, I've had it with a couple of organizations in the Netherlands, again, large organizations, and you know, sometimes you want to go for sort of the next hype. So at some point of time, some of them all went for whatever they would call DevOps. So the teams all had to be DevOps teams, and people in DevOps teams were called DevOps engineers. And in a lot of those organizations, they felt like, yeah, you know what, Scrum Master is it a role? Is it a function? It was difficult to fit into the organizational structure and review those people and performance reviews and so on. So it sort of became sort of a side job for even DevOps engineers still had some time left. Then he or she should also pick up the Scrum Master role. It was also rotating things sometimes. And the difficulty is, like, after a while, things don't get challenged anymore. They don't look for real improvements. The sort of the fluency within the team goes down a little bit. And but it is a slow evolution. It only becomes clear after a while. And then sometimes you have to some crazy people, like external people like me, throwing that question again. Yeah, but okay, who's supposed to do all those things? And then, yeah, that's right, as a Scrum Master. So how I've been dealing with the Scrum Master role, and then only then it becomes clear again. So it's not always, for me, one of the most challenging aspects of being a Scrum Master is that your impact is in a way very often very indirect.
Yep.
So you use the term measurement, though, right? And that's interesting, because so oftentimes when you see this, or you see, you talk to organizations about how they're measuring what teams are doing, are you outputting a lot of things? Is everybody really busy, right? And all of those things could be true. You could be really busy. You could be increasing the busyness. You could be increasing the output of a team, and it has no impact whatsoever on the customer, right? And so herein lies, where we've really concentrated a lot of time and effort in understanding how evidence-based management can help organizations see past that. And so a Scrum Master in the Scrum Guide says is accountable for the effectiveness as a Scrum team. One thing that we do have a bucket under in evidence-based management is ability to innovate. Now, that only tells a small story about the effectiveness as a team, but if you look holistically at those 4 KVAs, I would say that across the 4 key value areas in evidence-based management, holistically, the transparency that brings shows the value of a Scrum Master. If a Scrum Master can work on making things more transparent, working with the team to become more effective, and that doesn't mean they have to do it themselves. They can work with a product owner to show them how to use it. They can work with the team to show the team how they can make more transparent their progress towards a sprint goal during a sprint. And so although there aren't direct measurements, the transparency, I think, which is kind of segueing a little bit what you were saying, Gunther, is making it transparent what's actually happening, making it more well understood with the impacts of process changes and product evolutions is, to me, a really great way that a Scrum Master can show how valuable they are, right?
Yep.
Real quickly, I think there's quantitative and qualitative. So, and we focus on metrics on the quantitative side, which is fine, which is absolutely valuable. But I've been in back rooms with leaders who are making layoff decisions. I've been one of those leaders, and we don't pull up Jira and look at burn-up charts. There's a gut feeling aspect to it. So do everything that I've heard, but also walk up to leaders, look them in the eye, and say, do you understand my value proposition and what is it? And align on a visceral level with eyeballs and make sure that there's some passion, and be willing to pivot then if you need to pivot to show value in a different way. So I'm just painting that other side of things. And that's what I mean by communicating our value. There's that notion of the metrics will speak for themselves. No. The data will say, yes, data is valuable, but also relationship building is valuable.
Yeah. Yep. So what are, I know we hear this question a lot, and so what are some of the best tips for a Scrum Master entering a new team? Not necessarily a new Scrum Master entering a new team, but a Scrum Master entering a new team.
I think we're all trying to be polite and let each other speak first.
Well, I think if I'm a Scrum Master entering a new team, I really want to sit back and observe. And this drives people nuts, because I can't tell you how many times I've heard, hey, you've been here a week and you haven't really said much. Right. And I'm like, well, yeah, I really want to see the lay of the land before I touch it. I want to see what's actually happening. I want to see how people interact. I think a lot of what a Scrum Master does, which can be why it's so hard to quantify what we do, is improve the relationships between the product owner, the developers, and the organization. And we're building those networks and those relationships that Bob's talking about. And we're helping that product owner get more visibility so they can have more control over the product and maybe own a little bit of the budget, and maybe get so be able to speak into the strategy and tactics. And at the same time, we're helping developers work together better and teaching them to self-manage and building that skill set. But before you can really do that, you've got to see where they're at. And so I think being a little patient and not trying to just jump in and scatter all the pieces on the chessboard is really important. But once you do, like, decide to act, I think it's important, to Bob's point, the networking and the relationships, but also show up with a little bit of data. Like, hey, I wasn't just watching y'all. I was also digging into Azure DevOps, and I noticed that our WIP limits are way out of control. Our work in progress is crazy. Our item aging, we've got 4 items that are now a month old in their current state. These are things I've observed. Which one of these do you think we ought to dig into first? And so I think you show up on both ends of it, right? And I think that's super important. You're showing almost immediately or within a week or two a few critical issues that you could jump in and help with, and you can get the team moving forward. But I think most importantly, that cautious, honor where they're at, honor what they've done, and then show up with some good data, some good observations, and help the team pick the next best thing to do. I think that would be where I would start.
Can I just plus 1, 2, or 4 to what Ryan said? I see a lot of Scrum Masters that go too fast, is another way of saying it. And there's a good reason for that. They're under pressure. I just joined a new team. I just had a new job. But it's counterintuitive, right? So it's like, go slow, observe, learn, respect, and then figure out where you go.
A big thing I learned from Todd when we were writing our book, he talks a lot about And he does this in our classes and on our YouTube channel. Todd's got a lot of good insights. And this was one of them that, he would try a practice in one organization and it would work beautifully, right? Hey, we're going to do a swear jar, or we're going to do, if we're late to the daily scrum, we have to sing a silly song, and he would try to take that to a different org. And those are bad examples. He was doing, much more clever things than that. He would take it to another organization and try to implement that. And it just didn't fit the culture, or it didn't fit the team. And I think part of that observation period is really looking to see, what practices could work here, what could shift, because there's nothing ubiquitous about what we do, right? It's context is king. The individuals make things different. And so I think that's one of the big ones that Todd and I have talked about for a long time, and something that he's said a lot of really smart things about. And I think that's really important too.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Ryan. I'm blushing. It's interesting. It always reminds me too, because it is a balance, because you can't go too fast, but there's also a balance with going too slow, because it reminds me, I was in an organization for 2 weeks, a new Scrum Master there, and trying to take it all in, trying to understand the dynamics of it. And I was sitting in a meeting, and a director whose budget I was under looked at me right in the eyes and said, "Remind me why I'm paying you. You've been here 2 weeks and haven't done anything." Right. And I'm like, it was like, it set me back in the chair. And then I all of a sudden found like I was on this proving ground. But then I started talking about some observations that I had and hadn't taken action on because I didn't have the full context. And a lot of it was centered in that particular organization around how much work in progress there was, right? It was just so much stuff was being worked on, but not a lot of stuff was getting done. And that was a management pressure, right? And I hadn't relayed any of that yet, because I wasn't trying to walk in and just disrupt everything they were doing, because that's the way that they had always worked, is just everybody during sprint planning, get as busy as you possibly can, because that's what you're supposed to do, and then not finish anything. That was just this thing. And they had been doing it that way for 2 years. And I was going to slow step some stuff into that, but that did cause me to take action a bit sooner. It kind of set me back in my chair. So,
well, I think a challenge for Scrum Masters is to be what I call impatiently patient. Because first of all, don't forget to take it to the team, figure out, because you can, even based upon observations, you might think what the problem is. Always ask the people, so involve them at least, get them to go along with you. And when you're sort of injecting change, take it slowly. Make sure that people have time to absorb it, to process it, to digest it, to really get a hold on it, before bringing in too many potential changes at the same time. So be careful in what you think should change. So always take it to the team. And once you start working with the team, give them also some time to, of course, you want them to improve and you want to do this and you see potential problems over there and so on, but be patient. So be impatient in the change you want to bring, the improvements, but be patient in letting people, humans, digest and absorb it.
All right, thank you. So we did have a question about, let's see here, with generative AI and ChatGPT and more large language models upcoming, how can Agile practitioners take good advantage of this? Any tips would be useful. And then folks did respond in chat. There's some great links. There's a lot of stuff that Chris Stone and I think I've seen some good stuff from Stefan Wolpers on the topic. But do any of you have anything to add? Have you been using ChatGPT in any way for the things that you're doing? Are there any useful?
So
I don't even feel tempted to go have a look at it.
Yeah, most of the stuff out there is clickbait and silly little fun things. The most interesting thing I saw was that someone tried to pass the PSM1 with ChatGPT, and they didn't. I don't think they passed it using just ChatGPT, which makes me feel good about the Scrum.org assessments and that they do have a level of rigor still that's interesting. I mean, there's so much data out there, or so many articles now with Chat GPT that if you ask it a question and it doesn't have a good answer, it lies.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't trust. What I think Chat GPT could be interesting for is if, hey, I want to do a talk about evidence-based management. What are 10 topics I ought to consider as I put this talk together? And it can rattle off 10 ideas that you can then go be a human and build on and do real things with.
Yeah.
But I think that's the extent of the usefulness. Like I just don't see, I don't see much more than that. So a lot of the stuff out there, like I said, it's a lot of clickbait. It's a lot of, hey, look at my Chat GPT, and by the way, sign up for my class. And I get it. We all have to market, but you know, outside of a brainstorming tool, I'm not sure I would use it in a serious application, especially, at least not yet. And especially I would not pump my company's private data into that model.
No.
As you lose ownership of anything you put into it. So
Yeah.
I would caution people there too.
It does do a really great job of helping you with regular expressions if you're a coder.
Well,
so there's some
right.
coding benefits if you're coding some stuff. You can leverage it there.
JQL if you have to use Jira, like writing filters, it's really handy at coming up with JQL filters for you.
So I think there are things like that. And I'll give you an example of how I use Chat GPT. Every new video, I feed the transcript into it and it gives me a 1-paragraph summary that I paste into YouTube.
Yeah.
After some edits and modifications, right? And so I think it's good for repetitive stuff. It's good. It's a good automation tool. But you still have to be super careful. I think there's still a lot of errors and issues in it that now give it 2 or 3 years. And I think it's going to be a totally different ball game and incredibly scary. I just don't think it's there yet. I think a lot of hype and clickbait right now.
So I'm hearing it's not going to replace human brain quite yet, right?
I'm not concerned yet.
Well, I might add highly skilled. So to me, so ChatGPT, and I haven't used it, so I'm with Gunther, but my point is, I think there's a new technology everyone's overreacting to, but it does have a tendency to disrupt media folks who are not continuously learning, folks who are not continuously challenging themselves and growing. Right. So I think it's going to separate right, the wheat from the chaff, using that metaphor. So how I'm thinking about it is you continue, if you're not continuously learning and really being aggressive with building your brand and building your learning broadly and deeply and establishing relationships like I talked about, then you need to do that.
Yep.
Right. Invest in that. And if ChatGPT is a threat that can motivate you to do that, then great.
Well, I liked a lot the answer that, does anybody know Nick Cave? So the famous whatever songwriters. I like this answer to people sending him sort of songs and lyrics, whatever, that they say, oh, write me a song Nick Cave style. And they send it to Nick Cave, and Nick Cave just bluntly said, I dislike them. It's awful. It only compiles sort of all of the ideas I had in the past. It says nothing about his creative ability to come with new ideas and new lyrics and new rhythms and new approaches to his music. So imagine, I think John Long asked a question somewhere about writing a book. Imagine I've got a plan to write a new book about Scrum. I actually do. If I would ask ChatGPT, what should I write a book about Scrum? What should my new book of Scrum be about? Whatever, something like that. It would only bring up things that are already out there. It wouldn't inspire me to bring something new and some new innovative insight or whatever. So it's able to compile all of the information that is out there in a very smart whatever way, but that's about it, I believe.
Well, and actually only to the year 2021, the data that was used to data model, that was what they used to build it with, it only goes through 2021. So there's nothing past there that it's accessing for its data. So it's outdated. But now this next question, I'm a little. Okay, so the question is on the immutable point in Scrum Guide. However, Scrum Guide 2020 took out the word immutable, I believe. Or did they? Am
No, I
wrong?
think it's still, this is one of those nothing burger controversies that I wish would go away. It really is. It's a fascinating argument that no, immutable is still in the Scrum Guide. It's in the end note.
Oh, it
There's a
is.
few gentlemen in the Netherlands who are just insisting that this is an argument. The immutability clause is basically saying use Scrum as it's outlined in the Scrum Guide, and you can call it Scrum. You're free to do anything you like, but if you're not going to follow the guide, don't call it Scrum. This doesn't seem like that's a debate. You know, it's like you can play chess, but if you're going to make the queen jump 6 spaces and then slide 2 to the right, you're not playing chess anymore. But you can do that. You can have fun with the pieces and move them around, you know? And so I'm not sure what else to say on this other than this is not a controversial topic. This is not a Ken and Jeff are dictators and they won't let us work. No, you can work however you want. They encourage you to deliver. You know, they give this Scrum Guide out for free. They're doing great. They literally changed the world. And this, to me, it just feels like a very petty criticism of a body of work that has literally improved the lives of millions of people. And I hope this argument goes. Go ahead.
The fact that it's immutable only applies sort of to the rules of Scrum. Scrum is a very simple, minimalistic framework with a number of rules. Even when applying those rules, there are so many options. There's so many possibilities to apply those rules.
Yep.
So the people taking the immutable things as very serious, they just don't get the fact that Scrum is a very open framework. Within those rules, there's tons of tactics and practices you can apply, and they can make every Scrum implementation look differently, although everybody's applying sort of the same immutable rules. So it's just people trying to make themselves look important.
Yep.
It's like, it reminds me of like 6 or 7 years ago when every conference had the Agile is dead talk.
Yeah.
Right. So I think there could be a little bit of that going on.
Yeah, and on the other hand, we must be aware of the fact that Scrum is being used in so many places by so many people. There is no way that you can sort of, no matter how minimalist or simple you want to get it out there will always be people that see something, whatever, that they don't like and so on. It can never be genetically, universally applicable for everybody across the universe.
All right, I have to weigh in what they all said.
Thanks, Bob. That was very insightful.
Yeah.
All right, I like.
I feel like Bob, Chat GPT would have in the future predicted that you were going to wear red suspenders and sent us all red suspenders for today.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
But I think that sort of discussions, there's plenty of them. It's sort of, let's say, sort of the downside in a way of the success of Scrum. Scrum is everywhere; it's all over the place, and it in a way it also shows a little statement I had in my book that I said, you know what, I've referred to the technology adoption lifecycle of Jeffrey Moore with the chasm and so on, and there's a phase in which there's a sort of market leader emerging from the chasm, and he calls it the gorilla. And just Scrum is the gorilla of all agile frameworks, let's say, and the fact that all those people bashing Scrum and on the other side all those people promoting Scrum both shows that Scrum is just the leading framework. So people opposed to it and so on. So all those people bashing it, I would love them to bring something positive out. If they don't like Scrum, cool, great. What do you believe in? What do you stand for? And in the meantime, I welcome them bashing Scrum because it just confirms the sort of leadership position, the gorilla position of Scrum in a way.
And Gunther, to add on to your point with the bashing and the fact that Scrum is so simplistic, is oftentimes when you start asking questions, there's a lot of misinterpretations. People are saying, well, user stories don't work in our situation. The burn down chart causes negative behaviors. Story points don't work here. We don't understand them. And you start to hear all these things, and the answer is, well, that's not Scrum. Those are those practices that work at a point in time for a particular team in one situation. And now everybody's using them in everything. And so what I highly encourage everybody to do is read the Scrum Guide, read it again. It's 13 pages, and you won't see a lot of the things that a lot of organizations have as their interpretation of Scrum, as what may or may not be working for them. And so go back to simple. And that's a lot of times what we do when we go and talk to or work with an organization is, instead of adding more pieces in, we'll start pulling pieces out and getting it back to simple. And teams are more effective that way, oftentimes.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's something that's in a way something we can sort of, in a way, blame ourselves for, let's say, as people promoting Scrum. We still haven't got the message through that you've got the rules of Scrum and then tactics to apply the rules, to play by the rules. And people continuously confuse them. And thereby they limit themselves in openness and options and potential ways to apply Scrum, which, by the way, often also happens because of organizational pressure and imposing things. If an organization goes in and says, we're adopting Scrum, it's my typical example, and they say that all teams, whatever they do, in whatever technology, whatever product they're working on, all teams have to work in sprints of 2 weeks. And all their sprints have to start on the same date and end on the same date. They take away all of the openness that Scrum has. Because you can tweak your Scrum to your context, your situation, your demands, your consumer base, your whatever. And so we still haven't been able to get that message across that, yeah, there are the rules of Scrum, but you know what? Those rules give you sort of minimal stability, which you will absolutely need. And you know what? Within those rules, there are still so many options. If user stories are not working for you, try something else. So that the distinction for me, very important. It's also what my book is built around, the rules and then tactics to apply the rules. So important.
It kind of actually leads into our next question. And I'll add that I think of the Scrum Guide, setting guardrails. That's kind of how I've described it to my teams, that those are guardrails. But anyway, so now we have this case of line managers or chapter leads, whatever you want to call them, and obviously they're still part of many organizations. The organization org chart hasn't completely flattened, and so we're still dealing with that. And there's always a question of how do you deal with that and still have a self-organizing team when you have these chapter leads or these line managers, trying to, let's say there's 9 teams in a department and they're trying to standardize the Scrum implementation across those 9 teams. You'll all ask, okay, here is the daily Scrum script we want each team to use, and here is your here's your definition of done. It's not, and different things. And here's how you'll keep track of metrics. And they're just, how do you, I guess, I know they still have a role in Scrum. So what's the role? And then how do you have that conversation with them when they're sort of controlling the process of all your teams? So they're not really self-organizing teams, and you're not allowed to do things as per your context because there's so much standardization that they're imposing on teams.
I mean, one thing to think about real quickly is there's been this them and us. I don't know when it started, maybe from the beginning for 2 decades or more. It's like managers are outside of Agile. I'm going to say it that way. Forget Scrum, Agile, Scrum Run, XP teams. And in our language, we sort of talk about them like they're pointy-headed Dilberts. They're ill-intentioned. They don't have a clue, and that actually may be true. But I don't know if that's helping us by meeting leaders disrespectfully and not being inclusive and not partnering and things. So I want to put that out there that I think, and not all of you, but folks that aren't in this session do that. None of you do that. But it's like, don't marginalize the leaders. How do we partner with them? And let's go beyond that. How do we understand what their driving forces are? Maybe they're driving us for commonality across Scrum teams. So instead of saying that's not Scrum or that's not Agile, perhaps engage them in a relationship, try to figure out the why behind that. What's the business why behind that, instead of making assumptions. So I throw that out there as a general mindset shift to start with.
Yeah.
I think this is why, if I were to loop this back to a previous question, this is why SAFe was successful or is successful. There's a clear position for a manager in a SAFe implementation. There's not a clear position for a manager in a Scrum implementation. And so there's a friction. And Bob's right, the us versus them has been rampant. It needs to end. And I'm tempted to say, when a leader is trying to standardize, unless we give them a good reason not to, we shouldn't be pushing back on it, right? I mean, if we can go to them and say, here's the impact of this decision, and invite them into a conversation and see if they're open to suggestions, I think that's a positive step forward. But this is also where a Scrum Master, what we've seen, and this is not all the time, I don't think it's anyone here, but the Scrum Master stays so encased in the team. Well, they talk to the product owner, they talk to the developers, but they're never out in the organization saying, hey, when you standardize across all these teams, you're moving 2 or 3 really good things that these particular contexts require, and it's going to hold up delivery by a month. Is that really what you meant to do? And most managers will say, holy cow, I didn't realize that. Let's dig into it. Right? But if we stay in this, Todd's got another great term here, the Scrum bubble. Right? If you don't pop that Scrum bubble and get out into the org and actually do your job, then you don't deserve the right to go back and say, hey, this isn't a good thing.
Sorry.
Bob's doing theatrics over here while you're talking, Ryan.
He's falling out of his chair as I'm talking. I don't know if that's
this
good or bad.
reminds me of the this reminds me of the wild journey that the Spotify model has gone through, because so many organizations I walk into say, we have adopted the Spotify model, and I'm like, great, you're an insurance company. How, like, Spotify is a music streaming company. How is this going to work, right? And I think this goes to something that we are battling against, right? We're battling that as humans. We want surety. We want to know that there's a path from point A to point Z. That path for your organization in your context is entirely different than someone else's. And so for you to get to delivery nirvana, there isn't a playbook that you can follow from A to Z. No consulting firm that gives you a playbook to follow from A to Z is telling you the truth. You have to be adaptive. You have to have new ideas. You have to be the creative person that ChatGPT can't predict and can't replace and keeps learning. And you're learning all the time and adapting all the time. That's why we love Scrum, because of the emphasis on inspection, adaptation, and transparency. And so I do think that we are fighting a little bit of an uphill battle, because as humans, we just crave certainty and surety. And there isn't a agile delivery nirvana map that is going to get you there. You have to do the things that I think, Bob, you were referencing earlier, and Gunther and Ryan, we've all been talking about. And it's just continual learning and adaptability in the context of a situation. And I feel very strongly, as I know for sure Gunther and Ryan, I don't want to put Bob under the bus here as a Scrum person, but we're very passionate about, that's what's beautiful about Scrum and works so well about it when it's distilled down into those 13 pages, right?
Yeah, I remember when I wrote the first edition of my book, that's 10 years ago, these times. And I talked about agility as a unique state of an organization. And I said, agility can't be planned, because there's no way to time plan a road towards agility. I also said agility can't be dictated, and agility has no end state. And I remember in the second edition, I added something to that because it was so important to get out there. Agility cannot be copied. You can't copy agility from an organization, another department. But again, that is the difficult message. People don't want that difficult message. It's about learning, falling, getting back up. It's about acquiring it yourself, figuring out what is working for you, what is not working for you. And then again, agility in the fact that it has no end state. That means what is working today might not be working next week or might not be working next year. So you want to bring your organization into a state where you can cope with those unforeseen things. That's all what Agile is about, but it seems to be a very difficult message because people prefer the easy road often, which is also a very human thing, by the way. And by the way, Jamie, when you started your question, there was something that struck me because you said, you know what, line managers or chapter leads, whatever. And actually, it is not whatever, because chapter lead is a term from the Spotify model. And by saying that, by putting it in line with line manager, you just pointed out a big problem with people blindly implementing the Spotify model. Chapter lead is just a new name for a line manager, end of discussion. But that's at least how people implement it. It sort of makes me think back a long time ago, 2011, we launched, I was part of a beta training of the first product owner class by Ken. And it all revolved around the question in a way, in Scrum, who should write the user stories? That was sort of, we were so annoyed over the answer, typical answer to that question, that was driving us in creating a product owner class. Because people were just putting product owner's title on just the old school requirements engineer or the old school whatever analyst hidden deep in the organization somewhere. It's again the easy way. Just we're going to do Scrum. Scrum has 3 accountabilities or roles, whatever you want to call it. Oh yeah, let's put a new label on an existing function without rethinking the function.
That's a really good point. Yep. Well, we have 2 minutes left. So I'll ask a question, just a short question that was in here. Are any of you working on a new book right now that you can say, you don't tell us a secret of it if it's a secret, but any plans for another book?
It's a secret.
Yes, it's a secret, but it's happening. Okay.
We are, yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I'm
No.
too. Yeah.
Oh, I'm the odd man out. I'm not.
Okay.
Thankfully
No.
not.
You're the smart one.
Yeah. Loved your last one though, Bob. Loved your last one.
Thank
Okay,
you.
The last question, who's the best looking here? Gunther, Ryan, Todd, Bob?
I'm going Bob.
We're going.
Uh,
Gunther's hiding his face now. He's got
the moose.
the moose. Oh, it's definitely not me. That was about the panelists, not me. But thank you, Maru.
Grogu in the background. That's right.
Yeah,
Grogu,
I like
There's
Grogu.
Grogu hanging out.
Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate our panelists, Ryan, Todd, Bob, Gunther. Heartfelt thanks for coming today. We really do appreciate it so much, and your support of this community, and being willing to come and share. We had like probably 40 more questions we didn't get to, but maybe we'll have to do another one of these sessions sometime in the future. These are great.
Sure.
I learned a ton today. I don't know about the rest of you, but I know I learned a ton today. And so thank you, panelists. Thank you to the leadership team. Thank you, everyone. So appreciate you all. And may the 4th be with you. Go celebrate.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody, for
Bye.
coming. Thank you, Jamie,
Thank you.
leadership team, for the invitation. Wonderful
You're
to be here.
welcome. Most welcome.
Thank you all.
All right. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.